And we're live. Welcome everyone to our today's panel about forest innovations and sustainability. We have four awesome speakers here today from very different aspects of this industry. And we're gonna kick it off in a second. And before I give the floor over to our moderator, I just wanted to remind you that we at Startup Wise Guys, together with Latvia State Forests, have a program Silvatech that has started already in summer. And we are full-blown moving forward with this program that consists of 4 stages. And if you are listening to us right now and you're actually building something that is related to forestry, or you're building some technology that could be applicable to forest management, surveillance, monitoring, so many things that you will be hearing here today in the discussion, then definitely check out the website that you see on the lower corner of the screen today. So silvatech.eu. In the new year, we're starting a growth program, and the applications for that is open. With this, I'm finishing my advertisement break. I'm Zana from Startup Wise Guys, but today our host is Attila. And fun fact, Attila is actually a startup founder. We're very happy to have him in the portfolio of Startup Wise Guys investment. But today he's joining already as a part of Startup Wise Guys team. And he's the managing director of our upcoming sustainability program. But his background comes from agri-tech. Attila, the floor is yours, and I will let you introduce all of our other panelists today.
Thank you very much, Zana. And yeah, let me welcome the audience here as well on behalf of Startup Wise Guys as well. As Zana said, my name is Attila, and I'm going to be your host today. So with that, let me jump to the introduction part. We have 3 guests today. Let me introduce first Ilga Bērzkalna, who is Head of Development for Latvia State Forests. We also have Kaspar Põder, who is Sustainable Forest Manager of one of the hottest Estonian sustainability startups, Single.Earth. And we also have one of my member from my country called Bodis from the WWF Hungary Foundation, who is also nature enthusiast and the project manager of the forest program at WWF. So today's program is going to run for about 60 minutes, and we are going to cover a lot of topics. But the first one is kind of a warm-up and intro question, and I think everybody is pretty interested about that. So actually, why are forests important? And I would like to ask Ilga to answer that one.
Sure. Oh, forests are so important, especially for those of us that are in lockdown, because forests are a place where we can go relax and regain balance. But forests are also a place to work and ensure economic stability, a place to gain food and materials, a place for animals and plants, and most of all, a place to breathe.
Thank you. And I think you also answered what would Earth look like without the forests, but would you like to comment on that one as well?
I guess that if we didn't have forests, we wouldn't have any of the above. One wonders if we would even have life.
Yeah. Okay. Kaspar, a question to you. So what do you think? What are the top 3 problems across the globe that are impacting forests?
So it's a really good question, and the first one I would like to point out is, of course, deforestation. So during the last 40 years, the world has lost the forest the size of Europe. So actually, it's a huge amount of forest that we have lost over the last 40 years, and actually the rate is still growing, and we are still taking huge amount of forests down, and at the same point, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is rising. So it means that puts more pressure on the existing forest, and like the amount of carbon is rising in the atmosphere, but at the same time we have less forest that actually absorbs the carbon that is in the atmosphere. And I would say that the second one is the effects of climate change on forest. So there are new diseases, for example, that affect existing forest and forest fires that are related to climate change. So I would say that those are the most important factors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kaspar. Ilga, you wanted to add something? And also Pali. Yeah, Ilga goes first. Okay.
And so in thinking globally, but working locally, I think that in northeastern Europe, and in particular in Scandinavia and the Baltics, because of sustainable and active forest management, issues such as deforestation are of a much lower risk. In fact, in Latvia, we have significantly increased the amount of forest lands over the last 100 years. But I think some of the key problems, in addition to climate change, are things like human resource availability, which are increasingly difficult to retain in forested and rural areas that require human beings to be there, an opportunity for technology. And also, I think that the continued urbanization across the world of populations means a decreased understanding of the natural forest processes. This means that people are distancing from Mother Nature. And especially in this very politically complicated time where populism and superficial social media opinions rule, it's very easy to make hasty and uninformed decisions. And so I think that these are challenges that will continue to grow as populations continue to urbanize.
I think we are going to come back to this because you mentioned a very interesting comment. But first, I will like to ask Pali to also add his thoughts.
Actually, I'd like to highlight that the forest area loss in Europe is not so significant joined to Ilga, but we have another problem, which is more significant in Europe, the climate change. And especially in the areas like Hungary, where we are on the forested areas limit, like in regard of precipitation or other climatic conditions. And this is the case all over in the southern part of Europe. So it's not so significant maybe in the Baltic countries or in the northern part, but it's clearly the highest threat on the forests here. And related to this partly, and unfortunately related to the intensive forest management, the biodiversity loss is also very significant in all of the European forests.
Mm-hmm. Kaspar, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out biodiversity. And if we talk about Europe, then there's a huge problem, the biodiversity loss. Like, for example, we say that the area of the forest is growing, but at the same time, the amount of natural biodiverse forest is going down. So because when we travel around Europe, we see a lot of monocultural forests, but they are not biodiverse at all, and that they only absorb carbon. That, of course, that's a good thing, but we don't see any biodiversity in those forests. And one thing I want to point out more is the intensive forestry in Baltics, in Nordics, also in Europe. That actually intensive forestry is not good for climate. It's, of course, we understand that the forest that we take down, for example, in Estonia, it grows back, but we need to take into account how much fossil fuels we use to take this forest down, how much fossil fuels we use to transport this raw material somewhere, and we need to take all that into account as well. So that actually intensive forestry is not good for climate.
Pali? Yeah. Pali raised his hand first, so just...
Yeah. Related to this intensive forestry, I just got a shocking number. I think it's almost true in every European country that the utilized forests are really a high percentage. Like in Hungary, it's almost 95% of our forest is used, which cannot be a problem in any cases, because of course we need our forest resources and this regenerative material. But this has very serious effects on the conditions of these forests, as Kaspar mentioned. Also, another really joining challenge here is the emerging number of invasive and globally spreading species, which really joined to this intensive use of our natural resources. and the global trade.
Ilga, you wanted to add something? Yes?
What I would like to suggest is that sustainable forest management is in fact a method by which we can increase things like carbon sequestration. So, for example, all of the research shows that a 140-year-old spruce stand will not sequester nearly as much carbon, for example, as will two 70-year-old stands. And so some of these scientific conclusions have in fact discussed and proved that a growing forest is one way by which we can in fact improve our carbon sequestration opportunities, moving to utilizing of wood products in a much broader sense. What I would suggest is that we start moving toward discussions about how technology can help with some of these challenges, so that we can talk about things like modeling forest growth for the 10, 50, and 100-year perspectives, taking a look at how we can optimize forest management techniques and forest cutting, regeneration, thinning, and growth to maximize a variety of factors. For example, to maximize economic benefit, because certainly in Latvia, where forest management and related industries account for 20% of our GDP and over 80,000 jobs in the entire supply chain, it is clear that forest management is critical as an economic resource within the Latvian and I think Baltic arenas. But that doesn't mean that we only need to optimize our work based on economic benefits. In fact, at Latvia's state forests, we currently optimize not just for economic benefit, but for stability across species, across age groups, as well as taking a look at what our carbon sequestration optimal amounts are based upon growth projections that have been scientifically researched. So I believe that one of the critical things to look at is how all of these various factors can be modeled to find the optimal solutions in each geographic location, and they will be different in each geographic location. So balancing these factors of economics, carbon emissions, counteracting carbon emissions, and taking a look at biodiversity, age structures of forests, species structures of forests certainly is one very important tool that technologies allow us to do today.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great insight, and thanks for bringing this up, Ilga. And maybe I have a question to Kaspar here, because just listening to what you said, Ilga, I think it looks like a very, very complex problem. I guess it's highly unlikely that one single startup could solve this problem in its complexity. So Kaspar, in your experience, in your startups, do you work together with other startups, other technology providers in this region? So do you have kind of cooperations that could help solving this problem that Ilga described?
So yeah, as we understand, and the problem is really complex in the world. So it's what I wanted to add earlier to Ilga is the question about the older forest and what we're going to do with this land, so the forest, because we all know that the younger forest is absorbing more carbon from the atmosphere, but at the same time taking older forest down just to replace it with the younger one that absorbs more is not the right thing to do, because we need to keep in mind or take into account what we're going to do with this wood that we are taking out from the forest, because the only way how to help the climate is to keep this carbon that has been captured to the wood, keep this carbon as long as possible, and the only way is to build houses, furniture, replace concrete, steel. Like it's so much bigger picture. It's not only the forest, like what the forest is doing, how much the forest is absorbing, but it's a bigger picture, and that's why we need more than one startup. And actually, I'm super happy that we see startups growing that are trying to solve the similar problems as we do at Single.Earth. there are really cool initiatives that are like bringing new technology into the economy, for example, and actually it's the same thing that we are doing. Like we want nature to be part of the economy, and that's how we're gonna change the world.
Thank you, Kaspar. But you wanted to add something?
Yes, actually, I just would like to join to what Kaspar said, that this structure and the forest as a system is very, very complex, and there are lots of opportunities there. And it is really important to understand how complex it is. And as a forestry engineer, I learned a lot about it, but I didn't even understand everything. And I think all these startups can help us foresters and forestry professionals, nature conservationists, to understand these details a bit more with the help of these technologies, like geoinformatics, remote sensing and stuff like that, just to catch these small nuances of the forests.
In fact, I would add that just as we talk about the forest as an ecosystem, which has all of its various flora, fauna, land coverage and everything else, so in fact, if we're talking about innovations, the innovation ecosystem doesn't include just startups. It includes startups who have an idea and a technology that they can move forward with. And at LVM and in Silvatech, we are very eager to listen to those ideas and work with startups. But secondly, and not less importantly, in fact, very important, is our research organizations, which work to understand and quantify and algorithmize the data that they find in the forest about forest growth. Because without forest growth curves localized for the local area, which predict how quickly trees grow today, and also try to take a look at how trees might grow in the future in a changed climate environment, without that kind of scientific foundation, no amount of interesting modeling or optimization can occur. So in addition to startups, we're talking about research organizations, forest managers, forest owners, and of course, the downstream areas, which Kaspar already alluded to, wood products, furniture and construction, etc. So cannot disagree. It is a complex ecosystem, and it's certainly not an ecosystem that one startup can solve, which is why any kind of look into the future requires all of these parties to work together.
But I think that one startup can be a place or the somebody who is gathering all those people that have the needed pieces that we need to solve this problem. As mentioned, there are people that have really good satellite models. We have people that like working for NGOs. So basically, there are people around, they're working on their projects, but actually there should be somebody who is putting that all together and put those people together to work for one goal, and the goal is to save the forests and save the fight against the climate change. So I think the really important thing is to work together, not alone in our corners, but come together and work together.
Yeah, and just connecting to that, I mean, Ilga, you first off, I'm gonna have two questions to you, and I think one of them could also be answered by Polly. So one, connecting to what just Kaspar said. So I guess you coordinate and come up and collect these ideas and try to help in and mitigate the process. So if you just share a couple of first of all good ideas that you have seen in this in your role about forests, and also how can startups interact with your the ministry. So yeah, these are the questions.
Sure. Now, first of all, I don't work for the ministry. I work for a state-owned enterprise called Latvia State Forests, and we manage 25% of Latvia's territory. As such, we invest heavily in R&D, as well as various development and implementation projects. We currently have over 150 pilots of drones that are utilizing drones on a daily basis to take a look at the forest status, insect infestations, wildfire damage, melioration ditch status, and other issues related to the forests. We use remote sensing and GPS location data, satellite data extensively, and we are a leader in open data availability with over 30 data sets that are available for anybody, including startups, to take a look at the current status of Latvia's forests. And I encourage any startup listening to become familiar with the forest data that is available through LVM's websites. We do extensive work with, we have been testing machine visioning for forest inventory managing, utilizing satellite data. We do a lot with genetic selection in collaboration with research organizations that have been doing genetic selection processes for about 20 years and have another 10 to 15 years of genetic selection projects planned. These are not short-term projects. In addition, our research organizations here in Latvia, Selective, Latvijas Valsts Meža Institūts, are doing extensive work with climate impact and assessing future planting stock in future forests based upon changes in climate. So clearly, we can't talk about forest management without talking about innovation. It might seem surprising, but in fact, I don't mention things like computers and GPS locations for foresters, because everybody in the forest runs around the forest with touchpads and does all of their work in the forest locally with extensive GIS systems, geographic information systems that allow all of our staff in all of our work areas to record their work process within their applications, to send information via telephones or computers. So a lot of the work that is done today, which used to be done on paper, currently is done 100% digitized. And so what I would say is that the word innovation and sustainability in forest management are inseparable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Ilga. And Polly, okay, I wanted to ask about your experience anyway, but just come with your comments first.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to highlight that it is really important that all these developed forest management methods needs these technologies. However, it gives the chance to move to this big-scale systematic approach to the forests, towards a more small-scale, more nature-friendly, and more close-to-nature applications, like to support more the natural processes, and in this way we can help to develop the biodiversity, the structure of these forests, and we don't need to uniformize these forests as we had to in the last century. So these are really big opportunities to the upcoming forestry generations.
To give an example of what Paul just said, for example, we don't need square-shaped compartments. We need compartments that take a look at where the riverbeds are, that take a look at elevations, and certainly geographic information systems allow us to do that effectively. Drones allow us to take a look at where birds are nesting. Are the nests actually being occupied or not? And taking a look at other kinds of things like that. Geographic modeling allows us to take a look at things like natural paths and ensuring continuous corridors through our forests, and to plan forest activities in such a fashion that minimizes impact to those animals and birds that are living there, understanding and tracking where they exist. So all of those kinds of opportunities are things that technology allows us to do today, and certainly can be improved upon as we move in the future.
Thank you, Ilga. Just a very, very short off-topic request to our audience. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to send us. we are going to try and leave some time at the end of the conversation to answer some of your questions. Okay, I have seen one already, so we will have some time to cover that later. Okay, I wanted to ask about you, this Ilga, because you mentioned a very, very interesting topic a bit earlier, and honestly, this was the first time I've heard this in the same in this environment. So the role of social media and the responsibility of social media. So I sense that you have some stories around that. So or you have an opinion about how social media should serve this topic, this mission, how to, like, do you have any, so for instance, do you know any communities that could like people follow if they are interested in what is going on in that space, or how do you see the role of social media in this environment?
I guess I would mention Latvia's state forests that utilize both Facebook groups, Instagram, etc. The primary areas that we use that for is for communication of things like recreation activities, communication about the over 300 recreation sites that we manage within Latvia, communication about seasonal changes, communication of live streaming of videos of eagle nestings, births, etc. In addition, we have experimented with things like reporting of dumping trash in the forests, for example, which is a big issue, certainly here in Latvia. So the ability to report through a socially connected network about potential dumpings for cleanup purposes. So certainly there are lots of positive things that we can do with social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook, or any of a myriad of others. But certainly we do utilize those tools and are happy to participate in constructive conversations about various issues that arise.
Mm-hmm. Actually, this is also, you mentioned dumping trash in forest, and I think it's also a problem for us in Hungary, and I guess for the majority of Eastern European countries as well. So did you get any ideas, Polly, about what Ilga just said, how to utilize social media? Do you have any similar projects at WWF?
Actually, WWF is very actively using all social media platforms which is available for us. So everything. It is really important to communicate all these small things related to forest, just to bring the people closer to the forest, to understand that a uniform, very clean bottom forest is not natural, and how a natural forest can look like. Of course, we can put pressure on these sectors, like the forestry sector, if we like to see changes in the forestry in Hungary or all in Europe. So it is a very important tool for us as an NGO. You mentioned also this trash situation, which is a problem in Hungary, but I think it's partly can be solved by applications, and it already started by the Hungarian government. Maybe you know this application where you can report all these trash dumpings around the country, and it works quite well. I used it, and the trash pack is just disappeared. So we have positive examples also.
I'm very happy to hear that. I'm not following the social media channels where this was shared, but I'm just going to correct this mistake after our conversation. So Kaspar, you also wanted to add something, so just go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add that actually we are living in times when the social media has a really strong power, and I think it's really important that we use it. Like the people who are fighting for the climate, for fighting for the nature, that we use it, and it's the only way how to reach the people these days. And like everybody is on the internet, not only because of coronavirus, but everybody's consuming a lot of social media. So I think it's it's really important to show our efforts, what we are doing to get more people on the track to save the world with us.
Yeah, and maybe a very, very interesting but a slightly different topic is about the scale of economies. So while forests are very, very important because the like very important part of the nature, but some of the forests we also have to treat as investments, because as you mentioned, for instance, Ilga, it's like a big part of economy is relying on trees. So so I think one of the questions that come to my mind is that if to me it seems like a very complicated decision, again, on one hand to maintain the economy, on the other hand also take care of the forest. So how do you manage that? So what are the guiding principles? I'm not sure if it's a clear question, but
well, at LVM, our guiding principles are a balance between biodiversity, rest and relaxation and recreation activities, and economic activities. And in fact, what we do, I think, which is what many sustainable forest management organizations do, is determine which areas are primarily for forest growth, which areas are for mixed use, and which areas are to be set aside for recreation or biodiversity. That doesn't mean that areas that are primarily for commercial use aren't available for other needs, and that doesn't mean that we don't observe seasonal changes. But it does mean that there is a political decision that has to be made to determine what is the interest of a nation, what is the interest of a EU, what is the interest of a continent in terms of forest usage. Because it's clear that even looking for investments from individuals who want to counter their carbon dioxide emissions and think that they're going to plant a tree somewhere, if that tree gets planted, it needs to be managed. And it needs to be managed for its entire life cycle. It can't be managed for the first 5 years and claim credit because, woohoo, we grew a tree. Secondly, it needs to be managed for its entire life cycle, which also means the end of its life cycle. The decision as to when that end is certainly a decision that is a controversial one. Is it 70 years? Is it 100 years? Or is it 400 years? And again, the question boils down to priorities, primarily political priorities, about what's most important. Is it economics? Is it old forest growth? Is it carbon sequestration? So these questions all come down to policy questions, because clearly we can't grow forests everywhere. The forest profile is changing, as Paul already mentioned, in Hungary in particular. In Latvia, we're seeing that as well. We are a boreal forest, but we are on the border of that territory and slowly seeing a lot more deciduous forests coming into our primarily pine and spruce forests. So it's a complicated question, as many of these have been that we have discussed.
Yeah. Kaspar, you wish to add something? Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to add that the forest should be the part of the economy, in a sense that like right now it's of course it's really really big part of the economy, but we are measuring only the raw material of the forest. But that in the future we need to measure more things that the forest is doing, and as mentioned, one is carbon sequestration, and forest owner needs to get paid for that, so they can manage their forest more sustainably and use less intensive cutting methods, for example. And also forest owner needs to get paid for the biodiversity that is in their forest. It's because the problem starts, like we are asking why people are taking the forest down and why we are losing forest in the world. Actually, the answer is quite simple, because forest owner wants to make money, and it's forest owner doesn't care how he makes the money. He just it's an investment, so you want to get your investment back. So if we using technology can measure how much the forest is absorbing carbon from the atmosphere, how much biodiversity is in this forest, and we pay for forest owner to keep that biodiversity in the forest. We pay to forest owner, so he will keep his forest as it is and keep sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. I think that's the best way how to tie forestry into the economy in a different way, how it is tied to the economy today.
Yeah, thank you, Kaspar. And actually, there is a connecting question from the audience, from Zita, and I think I said that we're gonna cover some of the questions from the audience at the end, but we received quite a few questions, so let's just try to concentrate on those. Okay, so the first question is from Zita, and so actually the examples of, so can you maybe it's you are the best position, Ilga. So what are the examples of forest management practices in Baltics and Scandinavia? You can see that on the screen as well, that we could use as a sample in other regions of the world. Yeah, not an easy one.
Thanks, Zita. I guess I pass. I think that South American and Indonesian forest management is so significantly different from boreal forest management that anything that I say probably would be not based on a well thought out professional answer.
Yeah, I think that's the answer tells it all, and it just shows how complex the whole forest management system is, and we just can't have one answer to all the problems regarding the forest in the world. So
maybe we can have one practice which can be applied all over the world, that with developed forest management schemes, we can maintain continuous forest cover in all of our forest type all over the world. So we don't need to make big clear cuts and to make small forest then grows its big in a large scale areas. So this can be used all over the world, and yeah, it's not that effective and not that industrialized, but we have to respect that all these services provided by the forests are becoming more and more important, and now it's not just a resource of timber. So I think this can be a very good example or best practice which is come from Europe and can be applied all over the world.
Thank you, Paul. That is a good example, because you're right. In the Baltics, we have limits of, I think, fairly small clear-cut areas because of the very fragmented nature of the forest cover overall. So yeah, excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree that selective cutting actually is something that we can implement basically everywhere, and yeah, the problems in different parts of the world are different. For example, in politics, we have problems with clear cuts, like the only cutting method that we are using here, basically like 90% of the forests in Estonia are like the cutting method is used. What is used is clear cutting. But in the other parts of the world, for example, in South America, the problem is deforestation. So they take the forest down and they replace it with oil palm trees or start growing cattle there. So that's the entirely different story, and even bigger problem, because when you take the forest down and you don't replace it, it's a big problem.
And just to illustrate the complexity even more, even talking about boreal forests like Estonia and Latvia have, pine is a wonderful species. We have pine everywhere in Estonia and Latvia. Pine does not regenerate successfully in situations where you are doing a selective cutting. It simply doesn't. It's a sun-loving species, and it regenerates best when you have small but nonetheless clear cuts. And that also we can certainly provide some information about the scientific foundation for that, but it's a complicated question.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Actually, there are ways to manage pine forest sustainably without clear cuts as well, but it just it takes more time and more effort, and that's why we are not using it usually, but it's possible.
Okay. Yeah, let's move on to another question, and I think it has been partially covered already. It's from an anonymous LinkedIn user. Sorry. And the question is around maintaining a forest is expensive, and in some countries, for instance, in Germany, residents receive subsidy to maintain the forest. But there's also a reason why replanting new trees is often done in monocultures. So how can we convince forest owners to change that, and can technology help here? So Bodis, do you want to have a take on this?
Yes, absolutely. So in Hungary, we are working a lot with forest managers and forest owners just to promote all these close to nature forest management methods, where we have to chance to use those practicalities like natural regeneration, support of natural regeneration, diverse age structures and stuff like that, which if you apply them effectively, for example, with the support of these well-developed technologies or with just very high expertise, you can have the chance to reduce these costs. For example, if you don't have to regenerate your forests after a clear cut artificially, because you have the regeneration naturally present in the forest, in the place, without any actual investment, then we can say it's an applicable way. And most of the Hungarian forests, even with clear these cutting forest management methods, there are lots of foresters who are using this natural regeneration as a basis.
Okay, thank you. As we are primarily here to talk about the connection between innovation, so technology and sustainability, I'm just going to pick a question from the audience that is about that one, and that's from Toby Moore. And the question goes to Ilga. I hope that you're the best position to answer that one. I think so. So does LVM use satellite data tech to map and monitor forest composition, health, and age?
Yeah, hi, Toby. Good to see you. So yes, LVM does use satellite data. In fact, we have a wonderful team of GIS specialists that use LiDAR data and satellite data to take a look at the forest composition, the crown of the forest, the health and age of the forest. We have, over the last 10 years, every 2 to 3 years, put our fingers into the development river, if you will, to take a look at how we can utilize that data, utilizing machine visioning and other technologies to, in fact, to replace manual inventory management of forests. For example, right now we have a requirement by Latvian law to visit the forest at least once every 10 years and assess its composition, health, age, species, etc. That is a very time-consuming, also a very fossil fuel utilizing effort. And so we do utilize and continue to look at satellite data. In fact, as a part of our Silvatech acceleration program, we are working with a couple of organizations that are looking to improve the ability of utilizing satellite data, LiDAR data, and other sources for forest composition, health, and age. I encourage you to also take a look at the various types of maps that LVM utilizes currently that have been generated from satellite data available for free of use. So Toby, take a look.
Mm-hmm. Actually, just connecting to this question, Polly, because I know that these tools might be useful for WWF as well, in not only on the Hungarian level, but also on a global level. So do you already have any kind of solution? And if not, would you like to be interested to share some of these ideas and startups that could solve these problems? And so what is your regular approach about this, if you can speak to that?
Actually, because of this complexity, it is really hard to develop such an application which can present as detailed information that we can use in the most of the cases. But yes, sometimes if we have the chance, we are working together with these startup companies, even in Hungary. We already participated on development of a forest management planning application, which is finalized, and I'm really proud of this. But unfortunately, it just doesn't went through the forestry sector, so it's not a well-spread example. But yes, if that there's something promising, we are really open to work on it. As an expert or nature conservation perspective also.
Kaspar?
Yeah, technology today is already a really important part of forestry, and I'm sure it will be even the bigger part in the future, because like every forest owner, for example, in Estonia and Latvia and most of the Europe have the document called Forest Management Plan that lasts for 10 years. So today, somebody physically needs to go to the forest and measure the forest, and it takes time, and it's usually really expensive. So in the future, but for example, Single.Earth is already doing and testing is that we can measure forests from the distance. So using technology, using satellite data, drones, LiDAR data, it will make gathering this data cheaper, more easier, and based on that information, it will be more accessible, like the existing carbon markets will be more accessible for every forest owner, because today the small forest owners will not get access to existing carbon market because it's just too expensive, because somebody needs to go to your forest to measure it, do the calculations. But if we use satellite data, we are using models, we can do it automatically, and that makes it's cheaper, faster, and more scalable.
Pali?
Actually, we have an ongoing project which is a survey all over the Hungarian forest areas to identify all these high naturalness forests in the country, which are not intensively managed or have high biodiversity, and which can be identified from, for example, remote sensing technologies, is the structural diversity of a forest. If you just check any satellite images, you can recognize natural and managed forests easily. And for example, we are using this technology to find these forest sanctuaries which can be protected and which are not protected these days. And unfortunately, our most exact data of the Hungarian forests are coming from the forest management plans, which is provided by the Hungarian Forestry Authority. But they are, as I know, they are also doing researches, as Ilga already mentioned, towards remote sensing and analysis of these forestry structures, because the human resources are also becoming very limited there also. And there won't be a chance that we can keep this detailed description of the forests in the future. So we need to do these remote sensing technologies so much in the forests, not just for the forest management, but also for the protection of the forest natural values.
Thank you, Pali. Okay, another question from the audience, and this one is for Kaspar. And I might need your help. This one is also from Toby Moore, and the question goes: who would pay the forest owner for biodiversity and carbon sequestration, and who sets the price?
Yeah, hello, Toby. Yeah, it's really good question. So what Single.Earth is doing, we are building a marketplace where in the one end we have forest owners who have forest, and their forest is absorbing carbon from the atmosphere, and we are measuring how much this forest is absorbing carbon in real time. And in the other end of the marketplace, we have companies and those carbon buyers. So every time your forest absorbs 100 kilograms of CO2, we will mint one merit token to forest owners' digital wallet, and the buyers can buy those tokens. So the companies are buying those tokens to compensate their carbon or ecological footprint, and those token buyers are buying those tokens to sell in the future when the price is better.
Thank you, Kaspar. And I think there's also a pretty, I wouldn't, it's a bad pun, and also no pun intended, but it's a hot topic, wildfires. So actually we see more and more of those, and I think maybe a very interesting question. First of all, how can we avoid those wildfires? But second is, how can we help the areas that have been affected by wildfires? And honestly, I'm not sure. Yeah, please, Ilga, because I was a bit lost who is the best person to answer this one.
You know, wildfires are expected to be an increasing problem in the changing climate, and in Scandinavia alone, I know that Sweden has been most hurt by that. Latvia has had some wildfires, primarily caused by humans. Proper forest management ensures the placement of roads, ditches, and other instruments to prevent uncontrolled spread of forest fires. In Latvia, we've seen forest fires that have spread in conservation areas where there have been a lack of these kind of infrastructure elements to create fire breaks. So one important thing is proper forest management, ensuring fire breaks, ensuring access to water, ensuring that firefighters can access water in a quick fashion so that any fires that can be identified are put out quickly. Technology-based solutions like machine visioning can help with early detection. Those kinds of solutions are currently being piloted in Latvia. Use of drones can help identify the scope of fires, and in particular in Latvia, Estonia, and the Baltics, where a PD land cover is frequent, can also help with identifying the fires which perhaps aren't as visible to the eye, but might be visible through various sensing technologies that drones can fly over peat bogs and identify risk areas. Renewal of forests in fire areas utilizing genetically selected species can aid in more rapid reforestation and growth, thus not only replenishing the forest, but also sequestering carbon as quickly as possible. So all of these are areas that we are currently working in.
Thank you, Ilga. Okay, and as we are getting closer to the end of our panel discussion today, I think I just want to ask if there's anything that you would like to talk about, but I didn't manage to ask the question about it. So if one of you has a question already or topic already, just raise your hand and I will give the word to you. Okay, Ilga was first.
I'll let the gentleman wrap up. I'll start with I think that as the head of development of Latvia's state forests, I'm eager to be and honored to be in this panel today, and I'd like to thank the other participants. In particular, I'd like to emphasize to those that are listening that LVM continues to be on the lookout for application of new technologies, whether it's in the seedling weeding process, whether it's forest robots that can do forest trimming of undergrowth, whether it's remote sensing applications or anything else. LVM has a broad spectrum of profiles that we work in and are eager to look for partners for pilot projects, for potential investment, for licensing, purchase, and are open to a variety of collaboration models. And so if you are interested and are listening in working with the forest management issues that Latvia and the Baltics has, then certainly we are eager to extend our ecosystem past the research organizations and academic organizations that we already work with, past the commercially successful companies we already work with, and also look to those new seedlings, those new startups that are looking to grow quickly in a currently unforested area. So thank you.
Thank you, Ilga. Kaspar?
Yeah, and I'm also really thankful for this opportunity to be here in this panel with all the people here. It's been really nice, and I also want to point out that the world, like, we are in the crisis, in a climate crisis, and I'm sure that if we work all together, there is still a solution. And we are talking about clear cuts and deforestation and all that, but actually the solutions are really close to those problems. And we at Single.Earth we are saying that the only way how to stop clear cuts, how to stop deforestation, is to offer an income for forest owners, so they will change something. Like if politics say to forest owner, don't cut your forest, it doesn't work that way. It's since we are living in a free world, in a capitalist world, the money talks, you know. And if we pay for forest owners to do something differently, to leave the forest grow, to leave the biodiversity intact, that's how we're gonna change the world. And today on our webpage, forest owners can register themselves for pre-sales. Also, we are looking for companies and those crypto buyers, and we are building a community. So everybody is welcome to register themselves on our page today. And at the end of the year, we will open the first interface for forest owners, where they can insert information and see how much their forest is absorbing carbon and how much biodiversity there is. And we will open the market next year.
Thank you. And Bodis?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to remind everybody that forests are growing really slowly, and the forestry sector is like a slowly turning cruise ship. We are already started to turn, but it's quite slow. And with the startups and all these initiatives, we have the chance to make it faster a bit. So I'd wish a good luck to everybody who thinks to go to this direction and work actively on this sector. And we are really looking forward to work together with these startups. And I'd also really thank you very much this chance to have this conversation. It was really interesting to me also.
Thank you, Bodis. Okay, and with that, I would like to also thank you for all panelists for the great conversation. And I hope that this is only the first one of some further very, very interesting conversations in this topic, because we definitely need those to spread the word and to influence the community and highlight the importance of forests in our lives. And I would also like to thank the audience for listening and for the great questions. So thank you again, and goodbye.
Thank you, Attila.